Welcome everyone to today's product webinar. My name is Maria Nuesi and I will be your host for today's presentation. We are delighted to introduce a new feature to Remesh. And so our team will be going over Remesh Recruit, going over what it is, showing a demonstration of the feature, and of course, answering any questions that you might have. And we'll also do a preview of the Remesh product roadmap for 2025. And we'll end with a Q&A. So I do want to take a moment to invite you and encourage you to use the Q&A box to submit questions throughout the presentations or comments or thoughts, and we'll try to answer as many of those questions at the end of the presentation. I do want to introduce our two presenters today. We are joined by Emmett Hennessy, Senior Product Manager, and Jessica Dubin, who is our Chief Product Officer. So I will turn it over to Emmett to get us started and introduce Remesh Recruit.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Maria. I am very excited to be here today. Very excited to talk about Remesh Recruit. Before we dive into specifically what Remesh Recruit is and why you should be as excited and fired up as I am about this exciting capability, I want to take a step back first and just give a quick refresher on what Remesh is, what we do, who we are, and why we are important in and of itself. Remesh is a unique research platform for you to use. We prioritize the ability and the capability of getting unique insights and depth out of the participants that you have in your Remesh conversations. Using Remesh's proprietary unique algorithm and artificial intelligence, we allow a single moderator to conduct a one-to-many conversation with hundreds of people at once. You can think of it as a virtual focus group with, instead of a few people, hundreds of people. You can ask them questions, you get hundreds of responses at once, and then our proprietary AI helps you make sense of that information. It condenses everything, identifies where there's consensus, where there's divergence, letting you moderate the conversation as you go, pivoting and probing to explore topics of interest, and just getting an immense amount of quality and information out of your data. It's a really exciting and cool platform. However, one thing that we've known as we've taken Remesh to market for many years now is that getting those hundreds of participants into that virtual focus group, into that digital room at once can be tricky. We have a whole dedicated professional services team that has been doing this for years. They've partnered with multiple different sample and panel providers to then deliver this service to our customers to get the audience they're looking for at the scale they're looking for into their Remesh conversations so that you can then ask your constituents, ask your participants about the topics that matter the most to you and understand what they are feeling about individual concepts, topics, advertisements, messaging ideas. It's a really powerful process. However, we know that a white glove services approach to recruitment isn't always the right answer. Often there's a need for DIY recruiting, whether it be tight turnarounds on timelines or just budget constraints. You as a researcher might want to move fast and just do it yourself. To that end, we are excited that we're going to be rolling out Remesh Recruit. Now, there's plenty of other DIY recruiting tools out in the market. However, most of those are enabled and unlocked for surveys, where it's a little bit more straightforward to manage an automated recruitment process. You can kind of just hit go on the questionnaire and participants start streaming in asynchronously. So you might have participants go in immediately, some go in later. It's a little bit more of just kind of an open funnel. When it comes to recruiting for a live event, it's a little bit more tricky. I've joked with the team recently that I often may struggle to get like 5 of my friends to show up to a restaurant at Thursday at 7 p.m., let alone get hundreds of strangers on the internet into a chat room at Thursday at 7 p.m. So doing it automatically through code, through an API is complicated and tricky. It's something that if you were to automate that fully and build it out in a way that a system could automatically recruit participants, send invitations, send reminders, handle incentives, do the whole thing, that would be a pretty impressive achievement, something that a company like us would maybe want to host a whole webinar to announce. And so to that end, I'm excited to share with you all today Remesh Recruit, a first of its kind capability for Remesh, where you can now go directly onto the platform and for any Remesh conversation, if you so choose, you can turn on Remesh Recruit, punch in the audience criteria and logistics that you want, and with just a few keystrokes, get hundreds of high quality participants into your live conversation without having to worry about any kind of coordination or effort, all in a fast, simple, easy to use manner. We do it at the scale that you're looking for, getting hundreds of participants into your conversation. We maintain an extremely high bar for quality. The integration, the sample provider partner that we're working with is a company called Prolific. We've worked with them for years for delivering a lot of our services projects, and we we see a less than 1% rejection rate for participants when it comes to quality. Yet, despite that high quality bar, we're still able to do this recruitment incredibly quickly. I mean, recruitment happens in often under 24 hours, but at the worst, it's 1 to 2 business days to get your participants for your conversation. And then the part that's really, I think, probably reassuring or exciting for many of you is that the pricing is really straightforward. There's no hidden fees. There's no different tiers for worrying about like, oh, if I do or don't have all of these, like this criteria or that criteria or quotas enabled, the pricing is flat and simple to understand for each conversation type. I know that's a lot of different claims and attempts at saying these are the things that we can do. But as usual with these webinars, talk is cheap. And so instead, I'm actually just going to jump into the platform to show you exactly what Remesh Recruit looks like. Can you all see my screen where it says audience and coffee routines at the top? Okay, excellent. So this is Remesh Recruit. I've spun up a regular live conversation here. When you create that live conversation on the platform, on the audience page, you'll have a bunch of different options to choose as far as what your setup is. In this case, I've just chosen Remesh Recruit on. And then when you do that, you'll be presented with a screen a lot like this. All you have to do is punch in the audience requirements that you want of how many people you want to speak with, when you want to speak with them, for how long, as well as the audience criteria down below. We have hundreds of pre-built criteria that you can choose from that come directly from our panel provider, or you can input your own custom criteria. In this case, because I'm running a conversation on coffee routines, I'm going to have a question that terminates folks unless they drink coffee like myself most or every day of the week. From there, it'll update the conversation, and you'll notice that as I change my criteria, the pricing doesn't change. If I add or remove criteria, the pricing will not change. The one caveat or sort of trade-off there that I should warn about is we prioritized speed heavily when it comes to Remesh Recruit. And so one of the limitations is that you cannot have an incidence rate below 15%. Now, as long as your incidence rate is above that 15%, doesn't matter how many criteria you add. You can add more standard criteria, more custom criteria, you can add more quotas, but as long as you're above that incidence rate, you're good to go. The pricing will stay the same no matter what. Now, you might be asking, how do I know my incidence rate when I actually get to my conversation? What we've seen from a lot of our customers is that typically when they have their own target audience, they have a pretty good idea of what their incidence rate is. Even if you don't, though, the bright side is if you launch this conversation, so in this case, when I go through the flow and click publish, we will start recruiting participants for the live conversation immediately. If we do dip below that 15% incidence rate, we'll stop the recruitment right away. We will not charge you anything, and we'll just let you know, hey, sorry, this is actually too complex of a project for us to deal with. You can then either adjust the criteria yourself on the platform and try again, or hand it off to our incredible services team who's been around this whole time and is still here to handle the more niche and complex audience recruits that you might have, and they can take it from there. So just giving you all of these different options now to when it comes to getting your audience into your live conversation. I think that's all I want to say here. From here, you click launch, recruitment begins, assuming that my incidence rate doesn't dip below 15%. I'll then be taken to a screen that looks more like this. This was a live conversation that I ran with with Remesh Recruit, I should say, this past Monday evening. Now you'll notice I've got a new piece here that I have a kind of funnel of the screening shown to the right of how many participants are screened, how many were available for my live convo, how many actually qualified and met my criteria, and then how many actually committed and RSVP'd. Now, for this conversation, I only requested 30 participants, but you'll note and see that the participants who RSVP'd is significantly higher than 30 participants. This is very intentional. This is the thing that we do because we know, after, again, having a services team that has done this live recruitment for years now, they have honed and refined this process. And one of the key things that they've learned and we've built into the platform itself is that if you're running a live event in the future, you always need to recruit more people ahead of time than you actually need to attend and complete that session. So we intentionally over recruit. There's a bunch of different variables at play for exactly what that over recruit ratio is given the conversation. That's all built into the system. Yet again, it's just something that you don't need to worry about. All you need to do is tell us how many people you want, when you want them, and the audience criteria and audience requirements you have. We will take care of the rest. And then when you get to your live conversation, I'm jumping now to the analysis suite of the combo, your Remesh conversation will look and feel and take place exactly like a normal Remesh conversation. You can send questions as you go that are in your pre-built discussion guide. You can pivot and probe and ask new questions during the conversation, and you'll still get all of the same rich, deep, qualitative and quantitative responses that you want. You'll learn the same depth and interesting insights out of a conversation that you'd get in a regular Remesh conversation. For example, in this conversation, one of the main things that I learned is that I'm really bad at naming coffee brands. I worked with ChatGPT to come up with some potential ones for this example case study, and it turned out nobody liked any of the two ideas that I came up with. But that's useful. I mean, that's really compelling and powerful to know that there's wide consensus around people not understanding the specific brand name that I had come up with for this coffee brand. If, for example, going back to the presentation now, this were a real product brand, say I was a real coffee roastery that wanted to launch a new line of brands, that would be something useful and important for me to learn. And kind of going back in time as far as what that coffee roastery could have done in the market before Remesh Recruit was an option, is they probably would have had to accept a large number of trade-offs using other DIY recruitment or DIY research tools. Typically, you kind of have to take a trade-off of choosing one or maybe two of quality, speed, or scale. Whereas you can see in Remesh Recruit, we can get hundreds of participants very quickly, and you still get incredible depth and quality of responses. In other DIY tools or kind of in traditional like survey recruitment, you might see high rejection rates of near 30% of participants due to quality. But again, we see less than 1% of that when it comes to Remesh Recruit. Often pricing can be complicated where you might have premium criteria or other criteria that you have to pay differently for. Remesh Recruit is very simple. It's flat rate pricing. For reference, you don't necessarily need to write this down. When you kind of get onto the platform, you can see it yourself. For flex conversations, it's $1 per participant per minute of your session. And then for live combos, it's $1.25 per participant per minute. That's it. That's all you need to worry about. And then the other biggest benefit, I think, of using Remesh Recruit is that you get to use Remesh. You get to use this unique blend of quant and qual research. You get to get the scale that you're looking for at high depth. You get to get not just responses from every participant, but how those participants feel about all of the responses by the rest of the participants. It's a really powerful and exciting capability. And I think it's just going to make the approach of doing research on Remesh that much faster and that much more powerful. Now, while we're in the vein of comparing Remesh Recruit to maybe potentially competitor DIY tools, I also want to take a second to compare Remesh DIY and Remesh Recruit to our existing full service recruitment team, because we're very much viewing this as expanding the aperture of use cases with which you can use Remesh. So previously, you had to use, if you had any recruitment project, the only option we had was our full service recruitment. Now we have two options for you. And this is kind of our own take on how to identify which of these approaches might be the best for you. So if you need full control of the process, or you're working on a really tight timeline or tight budget, or if you've got somebody who has expertise on what your incidence rate is in your audience, Remesh Recruit might be a great fit for you because it's DIY, it's fast, you can get up and running without having to worry about any coordination with anybody else. Whereas if you'd prefer to hand off the recruitment to an expert team who has done this for hundreds, maybe even close to thousands of projects at this point, or they need to run global multi-market research, or it's a niche market that has an incidence rate below 15%, our delivery team would be great for you. One note on the global that I think I passed over, and I know it's going to come up in Q&A later, is that's worth touching on, is Remesh Recruit currently is only available for US and UK markets. So we don't have global reach yet. Yet another reason where, if you've got US and UK audience that you want to speak to, Remesh Recruit is your go-to tool. If you have a more global reach or you want to run research outside of those markets, our full service team can get the job done for you. I'm really excited about this. I've been trying to contain myself for most of the weekend today and at least trying to be professional in the presentation. But I just think it speaks so much to how Remesh is approaching 2025. We are really thinking about taking the use cases that we are typically viewed in and trying to expand them, make the workflow of Remesh as fast and capable for you, the researcher. We want to be not just a point solution, but a platform and a tool that you can use on a regular basis. Remesh Recruit is a great start for that, but I'm excited to hand it off to Jessica, who's going to talk about more of the exciting things that we have planned for 2025 in that vein.
Thank you, Emmett. That was so great. And I saw some really good questions coming in the chat, which we will get to after this section. So feel free to keep putting them in there and we'll get to them soon. I wanted to step back and give you a look at our 2025 roadmap holistically. This represents the big initiatives that we have planned for the year, all to the end of expanding platform applications, allowing you to do more on Remesh, and democratizing platform access, by which we mean just making it much simpler to run research. So I'm going to dive into two of the additional initiatives besides Remesh Recruit that we are going to be launching soon. The first of which is video interviews. This is coming to the platform at the very beginning of Q2, very beginning of April. And it's a huge change for Remesh that represents us moving from a kind of single type of methodology to broaden that application of Remesh and allow you to, the researcher, to do a lot more on Remesh. So not only will you be able to run your survey or your focus group, you'll also be able to run your in-depth interviews or your panel focus groups. Our video solution will allow you to flow effortlessly between whatever Remesh conversation you're running and more deep qual research. You can use it standalone if you're doing video IDIs as part of a standalone project, or you can incorporate it with other Remesh conversations if you're doing multimodal, multi-methodology project work. It will also leverage our really strong analysis suite, including summarization and auto coding, in addition to new capabilities like clipping that makes it really easy for you to add the voice and the face and the story to your reporting. And finally, very similarly to how Emmett was describing the pricing approach for Recruit, we're taking a very simple, very approachable perspective for pricing video to make it really easy for you to start using our video capabilities. You'll hear more and more about this as we get closer to launch, but I wanted to give you a preview so you can start to think about how you might be able to use video on Remesh moving forward. The next one will be launching probably in Q3. We might be able to do it in Q2. Is currently called Talk to Your Data. We'll probably call it something different when it goes to market. So you're really getting the behind the scenes look at the technology. This technology is really the forefront of AI. We're moving away from generative AI features into a world of agents. Agents are able to look at a set of tools, decide what tool to use, execute that tool, and then continue that loop to ensure that you're getting the best outcome. When it comes to analysis, we're leveraging this technology in a chat interface that can query across a single conversation or a series of conversations to find the answer that you're looking for. So whereas today, if you have an answer, if you have a question, you need to go into your conversation, look through results, or maybe summarize, or maybe you're leveraging autocode to find that answer. With this Talk to Your Data technology, you could simply ask your question directly into the chat interface. What are the preferences of this segment? And you'll get a response that's text-based for your qual data that will include representative verbatims. And then for any quant data, will also show a visualized chart. This just makes it so much simpler and more accessible to review and find insights from your data. It also opens up that capability of doing cross-conversation insights gathering and research that's more kind of broader and flexible than ever before. The two things that I really want to mention for this feature that's different than maybe grabbing all of your data and throwing it into GPT or Claude, which is useful sometimes. I think almost all of us do it. But what's different about this is that because we'll control the tool set that the platform will have access to, we're guaranteeing that it is the best approach to analysis. We're using all of the research best practices and really looking at all of your data. Whereas if you're dropping all your data into GPT, it will cherry pick from there to give you your answer. And it's hard to guarantee that you're really getting the right results. Whereas with our platform, with this implementation, it will be highly reliable and will also show you the sources. So you'll always have a reference point to the raw data that you can go in and double check or just dig a little bit deeper. So we are really excited about this capability. I think it will make a really big difference in the way that our users, you researchers, are working with your data, not only in the moment of compiling your reports, but even after the point of the report handoff, where maybe a stakeholder comes back and asks an additional question that wasn't in your report. I know that never happens. Um, and instead of having to feel like you need to go back and redo the report or do a deep dive analysis, you can simply use this tool to find the answer for that stakeholder. So a lot of new applications on our platform, a lot of new technology coming to you through Remesh. And I think this is a good time to open it up for Q&A.
Amazing. Thank you, Emmett. Thank you, Jessica. There are a ton of great questions. Again, if you have questions about any part of the presentation, please feel free to share them now. We have a few minutes to go over them. The first question is for you, Emmett. What happens if not enough participants show up to the live conversation?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. It is typically the number one fear when recruiting for a live conversation with Remesh. And I also noticed that there's, I think, some questions in the Q&A around over recruit percentage. So I'm going to touch on that one as well, because I think it's all kind of represented. The short answer and the important answer is no matter what happens, you will pay for the number of completes or number of people who completed the conversation or the number of participants you requested, whichever is lower. And so just giving some examples here, say you requested 100 participants. If for some reason, due to show rates or something unanticipated, not enough participants show up, and only 90 of the 100 show up and complete the conversation, you will only be billed for those 90 participant completes. We're not going to charge you for participants that you did not receive. Similarly, if you request 100 participants and we over recruit, but we see a way better show rate than we expected, and 110 participants show up, you will still only be charged for 100 participants. We are not going to charge you for participants you did not ask for. We will get you the number of completes that you requested and charge you for that, or the number of completes that happened. Now, the other thing that we will do is automatically, if you requested 100 completes and 90 people showed up, is at the end of that conversation, we recommend just running the conversation as is. At the end of that conversation, automatically, the system will duplicate the conversation, the live combo, into a flex combo, our asynchronous offering, and get it set up so that it could be launched right away with your exact audience requirements you already had. And we'll get in touch with you, basically to confirm, hey, do you actually need those extra 10 participants? If yes, we can get them for you in under 24 hours, pretty much. If not, we won't do anything, but it's your call at the end of the day, whether or not you need those extra participants to get up to your total end size, or if you're content with the number that showed up for the live conversation. Again, all that we want to do is make it easy and straightforward and fair as far as pricing goes, for you to get the end size that you're looking for in your research.
Awesome. There are a couple of questions regarding pricing. Emmett, if you don't mind spending a few minutes kind of going over how is this price? What is the pricing model for this? Thank you.
Definitely. And I realized I actually didn't touch, I mentioned the over recruitment question. I didn't touch on that. Really quick, I'll answer that, and then I'll move into pricing. As far as over recruit goes, you do not, as the user, as the researcher, you do not need to worry about over recruit whatsoever. Just input the number of participants that you actually want. Like, what is the number of completes that you want at the end of the session? We will take care of the rest. We handle adding on multiple percentages for different parts of the pipeline to make sure that we get you the total participants that you're looking for. But you do not have to worry about over recruit percentage whatsoever. We will handle that entirely. It's based on a variety of different factors of like the number of participants you want, criteria, time of day. Like, we do math under the hood to determine the best over recruit percentage. So you do not need to worry about it. As far as pricing goes, the pricing is flat rates. So for flex conversations, again, that's our asynchronous offering. It is $1 per participant per minute. So if you run a 30-minute combo with 100 people, that is $3,000. Cool. I probably shouldn't make myself do math on the spot. That's a good way to embarrass myself. But flex is $1 per participant per minute. Live is $1.25. So $1.25 per participant per minute. I think the comp is if you have 60 minutes for 100 participants, that'll end up being $7,500, I think is the price. Should be noted, those are sample prices. That is just to handle participants. It handles the recruitment costs. It handles paying them after they've been screened out. It handles the incentive. It handles everything related to participants and paying them for sample. It is separate from software costs. So paying for the Remesh platform itself is a totally separate line item. Just to be noted that, when you go through the sales process, that will be totally clear. But what you're paying for as far as Remesh Recruit goes is sample only. Okay, I think that answers everything on pricing.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is related to setup. So does the setup need to be done in the same part where you are setting up your actual focus group discussion guide?
It's a great question. So there's two elements to it. One is, yes, that is where you'll be doing the setup. So in the platform itself, you'll create a live conversation. You'll input a title for the conversation of what you want participants to see. And then you'll go through the audience page where you choose, I want Remesh Recruit. You do all of the audience logistics that I showed you. And then on that same page, there's a separate section for building out the questionnaire. Now, an important thing to know is for live conversations, because you're scheduling this live convo 1, 2, 3 days in the future, you do not need to have your discussion guide finalized for when you hit publish and recruitment begins. If you want to, you can, and I actually did this for the session that ran on Monday night, is I kicked off recruiting without having a single question in my discussion guide. And then I used the time in between while the system was automatically recruiting my participants, sending them invitations, sending them reminders. I used that time to build out my discussion guide so that when my participants showed up at 7 p.m. on Monday evening, I had a set of questions ready to go for them.
Awesome. In terms of payment for this, do you pay through a credit card or ACH? How does the payment process work?
It's a great question. That's typically going to be handled with your individual account representative. So you'll get in touch with an account rep. They will then figure out a pricing and sales and contract approach with you. And then we handle it, I think, through invoicing. But my defer there will just be get in touch with an account representative and they get you set up. I can say we don't currently have, at least on the platform, the ability to pay via credit card, but talk to your account rep and they can get you set up with payment. I see two questions around incentive, so I'll just address them really quick. Yes, participants get paid. They absolutely get paid. We pay them fairly competitively as far as the market research or the research market goes. And two, in that price, incentive is included. So that is an all-in price. When you pay $1.25 per participant per minute, that handles the price that we pay, like the actual incentive that we pay to participants. That handles the fees that we pay our panel provider for sourcing those participants. It handles everything.
Awesome. There are a couple of questions related to niche audiences. Has the team tested the recruit options with healthcare audiences like doctors and patients, assuming the 15% incidence rate is met?
That's a great question. So right now, we don't explicitly recommend using Remesh Recruit for niche or specialized audiences, such as IT decision makers or healthcare professionals. There are a lot of criteria that, again, come out of the box from Prolific that somewhat fall into this camp. So if you can find criteria on the platform that meet your needs, I'd say go for it. But typically, we recommend running specialized audiences, specialized recruitment like that with our services team who have done this for years and have a lot of experience recruiting exactly those type of professionals.
Awesome. One more question here. Is the audience criteria compared to what is answered in onboarding? For instance, in the example you showed, you had sex. If their sex is in the criteria doesn't match onboarding questions on sex, do they get kicked out?
Great question. The answer is yes. We do a lot of vetting of screening to make sure that the participants match the audience criteria that you've requested. We double check that. And then we also make sure that they match all the custom criteria that you request. So participants that get into the conversation are only the participants that you've requested. Full stop.
Awesome. The last question, because we're almost at time, is do you have a recommended length of the conversation for participants recruited for this panel? Would a 1-hour conversation work?
1-hour conversation absolutely works. I'd say that is the vast majority of usage on Remesh. When they're running live sessions, they are typically 60-minute, 1-hour sessions. But you can kind of run whatever you want. We typically see ranges between 30 and 90 minutes. But if you've got a certain amount of questions that's going to run less than an hour, more than an hour, you have the flexibility to choose that. Again, the price and the incentive to participants fluctuates based on that. So, whatever duration of research you want to run, we can support that on the Remesh platform within reason, at least.
Awesome. Lots of great questions. If you still have a question that wasn't answered, please reach out to us. We would love to answer the question for you. As mentioned, Remesh Recruit is live. It's already available. So if you're also interested in using the feature, please reach out to us. Otherwise, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Emmett, for the content you shared today. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Excellent. Thanks, y'all. Great questions today.